Today is the anniversary of my father's death. I was 11 when he died, and while his death was not completely unexpected, the end came quickly, and I had no chance to say goodbye. I never got to know my father John as an adult. I don't know what he thought about as he became frail and weak towards the end of his life. I don't know what or who he was proud of or what he regretted, but I do remember seeing him soften in the last stages of his life. Facing death can teach us much about life, and thankfully, it's never too late to learn life's lessons. It seems that the readings of this first Sunday of Advent pick up on the options that we have before us as we face the realities of our own mortality and frailty, and how we choose to live. On the one hand, St. Paul urges us to increase in love as we make our way through the journey of life. St. Paul is straightforward as always. He writes, "Make more and more progress in the kind of life you are meant to live, the life that God wants." On the other hand, Jesus issues a warning. Don't allow your hearts to become coarsened or your arteries hardened by our destructive habits and behaviours. As life goes on, of course, each of us is capable of both of these possibilities, love and fear. But ultimately the question we each must face is this: is the path that I'm on leading towards life or death? Towards growing a large, grateful, loving heart, or poisoning my future with embitterment, regret, and stubbornness? The frightening truth, of course, is that in all freedom, God does give us a choice. The choice is rarely clearly defined because most of us are a mixture of both. But in one way or another, we need to decide whether we will hold on to our angers and resentments, which will only ultimately lead to coarsened hearts, as Jesus says, or will we be drawn towards growing a gracious and tender spirit, which increases and matures as we grow older? Advent marks a new beginning. Advent reminds us that it is never too late to make choices for the better. The first weeks of Advent are often blunt in their scriptural imagery. There's an end that will come sooner or later for us all, as there will also be an ending for the whole world. How we make sense of all this mortality and finitude, will determine whether our hearts increase or decrease along the way, whether our hearts enlarge or whether they shrink. A life which is not turned towards love is truly meaningless and full of sorrow. And we die emotionally in our spirits long before we will physically die in our beds. In the Advent season, we sing praise to the great virtue of hope. This Advent and every Advent, we are told over and over that whatever about our past choices, new choices can always be made. And so Jesus says today, take hold of your life, and with God at your side, make new choices. Stand tall, Jesus says, and hold your heads high. Look outward to a new horizon of hope. Your liberation, your freedom from every sorrow and shame and fear is closer than you think. But you can't see it if you look down. Jesus says, look out, look high, look around, because God is here to come to your rescue. For this is the truth that Advent proclaims. God is here and comes to our rescue. During Advent, we are urged to make life choices grounded in faith, hope, and love. It's both freeing and terrifying to realise that we have a choice, and it's a choice only we can make. We always have a choice. We can coarsen our hearts with the stresses and problems of life, or we can mature and grow in the life that God intends for us, to increase in love for others, the whole human race, and the whole of creation. Jesus doesn't force us one way or another. Jesus both warns of the consequences of one path, of hardening our hearts, and encourages us to take another path, to look up and look out, to stay awake, and to be on the lookout for the God who comes to our aid. Ultimately, the only path that will lead us anywhere of value, the only path that will lead us home, is the path on which we make more and more progress in the kind of life that we are meant to live. In the quiet depths of our heart, we all know which path this is for us. Advent tells us that it's never too late to begin to walk this path. And once we start, we can continue to walk this path in hope and confidence. Beyond the narrow and dusty path of mortality and frailty lies the wide path of faith, hope, and love. And it is by this path that we are led to our Father's house, to where we are truly born, in the Advent womb of eternal love.